You are Locked On Bulldogs Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Bulldogs Postcast. I am your host, Jarvis Davis, and ride with me this evening is my main man, Brian Gebhardt. He is a UGA alum, and you know I've been covering all of Georgia sports for 10 plus years. Because y'all know, I know what the heck I'm talking about. Brian knows what the heck he's talking about. So we appreciate you guys for riding with us this evening. Now, I want to start by saying thank you for making the Bulldogs Postcast your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you download your podcast, and wherever you download your podcast, make sure you just leave us a 5-star review. I really appreciate that from you in advance. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. Coming up on today's show, the playoffs might be out of the question for the Bulldogs, and then we'll take a deep dive into how Georgia's secondary got cooked. But first, I know we were really hard on the Bulldogs. On Carson Beck, last week. He threw 3 interceptions, and he deserved pretty much all of it. But Bulldogs, take a L, to the Ole Miss Rebels and Lane Kiffin, and Lane Kiffin gets his first big win in Georgia history and Ole Miss history. And BG, man, when you think about things that went wrong, I think you said something, and when we started talking about texting back and forth about this, about the show getting ready, I feel like the same old, and injuries just really came to a fruition tonight.
Yeah, this seemed like a culmination of kind of everything we've seen this season that's been an issue for Georgia. Like you mentioned, the last couple of games, Beck has been the problem, right? Yes. Tonight, he was just kind of a problem. He didn't really stand out and do anything great. He didn't do anything overly bad. I know that he had the pick. It was on a tip pass, but he was just kind of ho-hum type of performance. But what really happened, if you want, like the nitty-gritty of it, is the offensive line got whooped up front. Like they got gotten. They got bad, especially Ernest Green. He let up a couple sacks. He got torched twice. One time he actually had help too from Delp and still wasn't able to get it done. So you had that situation, and it seemed like, okay, first couple plays of the game was run. And I wrote down, I love the commitment to the run. I love giving the ball to ETN. He clearly had that heavy rib jacket on, get the offensive line a little bit of rhythm. And of course it was coming off of a turnover right away, and it kind of Georgia seemed to capture this momentum there for a second. But then from that possession onward, the offense looked horrible, and the physicality, Ole Miss won by a mile in this game, and on really in all aspects, but specifically when you talk about that offensive and defensive line. So yeah, there was a lot of things that popped up here. We were kind of like, all right. And on top of all that, we haven't even mentioned it yet. I know we're only a minute or two into this thing, but it kept popping up because the ticker kept going up on it. And Georgia's now up to, 27, 28 drops, leads the FBS. So on top of quarterback struggling, offensive line not being as good and physical as you think, you get all the drops combined with that, and it leads to a multi-score loss on the road.
Absolutely, man. And I think you make a couple of good points. And Georgia takes the L 28-10 on the road at Ole Miss in front of a record crowd. 68,123, I think was the number. So they had their full support. So I think Ole Miss fans had a good hunch that they might get the dub tonight, and that's exactly what they did. But I think the drops were huge. London Humphreys on 3rd and 4. That was an absolute abomination. Catch the football, man. Like, help your quarterback out. And also Urosic. Urosic has just been so underwhelming. I don't want to call him a bum because, he's a scholarship athlete at a Power 5 school. I don't want to go that route, but I will say he has been so underwhelming this year. And I think this tight end group, obviously, when you talk about Oscar Delp and that play where he and Ernest Green, they gave up a sack. Ernest Green got absolutely demolished, destroyed tonight. He got exposed. And when you think about, Ole Miss and that defense giving up 13 points a game, sometimes you think about it and look at it like, oh, well, they haven't really played nobody. But those guys know how to sack the quarterback. And when you have a double-digit lead and teams have to pass the football. Oh my gosh, that was the perfect scenario for Ole Miss. And it was the absolute worst scenario for Georgia. And because, like you mentioned, they started off the game, run, run, run. I absolutely loved it. I was like, okay, I see you, Mike Bobo.
Mhm.
Don't necessarily put the game in the hands of the guy that's turned it over 6 times in the last a couple of games. So and then when you start to see them, they finally got in the end zone. They went 4 straight drives with a punt and ended the half with taking a knee. It
Mhm.
was just an absolute clinic that Ole Miss put on, man. So, and I thought I would never say this, B, but Lane Kiffin outcoached Kirby Smart.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. I mean, listen, this thing was 28-10. It was a wider gap than that. I mean, and you take away, you
They
take
were
away the
about
first couple
1,000.
minutes of the game, right? You get the pick on a pass that was interfered with, and then Dan Jackson was able to pick it off, and you bring it down right outside of the red zone, and then it's run, 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 and then Kirby kind of goes out of character, Kirby/Bobo, in terms of going for it on 4th down. I was shocked at that moment in time that Kirby actually wound up going for it, getting the touchdown, and it wound up being really necessary to stay in that game for a while. But this game could have been even uglier and probably should have been uglier, because they probably kicked 3 there. Who knows if they ever get in the end zone again, because they didn't wind up doing it in the game. But it's just a situation now too where it's weird, because last week, and I'm one of the people, and for like a month plus, it's kind of like, all right, lean on the run, lean on ETN, and you saw it early, like you mentioned, but they weren't able to execute it after a while, right? So now it's this combination of, all right, I think Bobo is trying to do different stuff, maybe trying to be more conservative, trying to get that offensive line in rhythm, and then they weren't up for the fight. They just weren't ready for that. And then obviously ETN, something happened with him. They never really talked about it. I couldn't find anything on Twitter, anybody at the game, but ETN had all those carries in the first couple series, and then I don't think he touched the ball. I mean, maybe 1 or 2 touches in the second quarter, and then he kind of appeared again there at the third. So with him being out, that kind of changed the dynamic on the field too, because you got to have Frazier out there because he's the most explosive option, but then he's not a great pass blocker and not really good in the passing game yet. And then you found yourself in passing situations. So
And you can
again,
hold on to the football later on in the game.
yeah, it was just like all the issues that have been all came to a front today with the offense, and it was really frustrating. But it was one of those for me. Everyone's going to say play calling sucked. Was it great or like revolutionary or anything? No, but I didn't really have a problem with the play calling necessarily today. It was just a matter of you got beat, you got whooped.
You got whooped, you got curb stomped, and here's the thing. I know this line of thinking may sound a little crazy, but for me, you couldn't the final result of this game couldn't have been on Carson Beck. You couldn't let him come out the ball and come out throwing the football on 1st down, every down early on, quote unquote, trying to get him into the football game. You just couldn't do that. So, because I'm sure Kirby Smart is a defensive minded coach. Defensive coaches will put the clamps on the OC from time to time. And I really feel like Kirby may have had that conversation with Bobo saying, hey man, let's lean on our run game and play defense. And I think that, when that run game wasn't necessarily there like you wanted it to be, given all the injuries that you were dealing with up front, because when I saw not Mike Bobo, when I saw Bobo's son, Drew Bobo, I think his name is. When I saw Drew Bobo go into the game at guard, I was like, oh my Lord. You just start seeing the fire and the salivating of Ole Miss's defensive line. Jared Ivey was like, "Oh yeah, let me line up right here over this right guard. It's sweet right here, baby."
A lot of them, some guys ignoring the coach, like I'm getting the lineup on him. This is my guy. This is right here. Yeah, this is it. This is it.
That's what I want. So, and that's just truly unfortunate that it ended up playing out that way, man. And hopefully, this is an offense that can kind of get this thing together, because they got Tennessee coming up in a little bit, and we'll definitely talk about that a little bit later on. But speaking of Georgia defense, Glenn Schumann had no answers for Lane Kiffin's offense. But I got a stat that may have you looking towards 2025. We'll talk about that next. But first, I want to let you know that this episode of the Locked On Bulldogs Postcast is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn isn't just a job board, people. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit their other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, then you're looking in the wrong place. I'm telling you guys, LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier because that's what it's all about. You're just trying to get good employees in so you can be highly productive and make some money. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege. To post your job for free, terms and conditions apply. Oh my gosh, BG. I felt like in this game, Glenn Schumann was trying to play man. They were still getting completions. He tried to play zone. They still getting completions. And from time to time, he's tried to heat up Jackson Dart, and he was able to get to him. I.e., Dan Jackson got the pick and the offense was able to capitalize off of that. But I think just throughout the game as a whole, in total, this was one of those games where you just looked at it and it was just like, it seemed like Glenn Schumann just did not have an answer. And the thing that's disturbing to me, the number that stood out to me, well, they gave up 8 plays of 20 plus yards, explosives. They gave up those consistently, BG. And that's the number that scares me because we talked about last week how this defense almost has to play perfect, given how your quarterback was playing and given how the offense had been struggling with holding on to the football.
And some of those plays too, Jarvis, some of them were easy. Some of them were just complete missed assignments.
Kitchen catch 7 on 7.
Yeah, just simple stuff, wide open in the middle of the field. Just completely not. I mean, just the assignment football on the Georgia side was rough. I mean, that's the thing that Kirby had to be going crazy over. I'm sure he was frustrated with some of the stuff that he saw offensively tonight, but what you saw on defense was just terrible. And I think after that first possession where Dan Jackson got the pick, right, and you saw the pressure up front, and you thought, all right, maybe it's one of these kind of nights. Jackson Dart's limping off, and it's all of a sudden, okay, it's Kirby versus Lane Kiffin. They're up 7-0, and this is what's going on. And he thought it might go kind of in that other direction. And then the backup quarterback comes in, Austin Simons, and he's coming in with tempo and rhythm, and he's just getting the ball out very quickly. And it's almost like they found a little something there in terms of, okay, just get the ball out quickly. This defense is gettable. The secondary is gettable. And Simons went right down. It was also pretty funny that Jackson Dart went from really limping to be like, all right, I saw one possession with him.
I'm good,
back out
Coach
here.
Neal.
He literally gave him a pat on the back. I don't know if you saw that. He literally gave him a pat on the back. He's like, that's cool.
I got
cool.
this young man.
Still my squad. This is still my team right here. So I'm going to get in there and go do that. And they look like they got one there as far as following up after Jackson Dart in Austin Simons. But, with that, it was – and now you've had a lot of issues have happened in the secondary and a lot of miscommunication and missed assignments. But you had one that I think was about a 40 yard pickup. It was the pass to the running back there for Ole Miss, the guy who scored in the end zone as well early on. But it was a dump off pass where C.J. Allen ran with the slot receiver as well, and they wound up doubling him. Running back comes out of the backfield, and he's just completely wide open. It was 2 or 3 plays like that where it's just weird, non-bad communication kind of things on defense, just stuff that you haven't seen. And now this has happened a bunch over the season now. This is multiple times a game. And when you run into an offense like that, which could be the best offense in the country, is by a lot of metrics, they're going to expose you.
Yeah, man. This was one of those games where, like we mentioned, this is something that, we were looking for this defense to have the type of performance that gives you comfort to say, all right, even if Carson Beck turns over the football, even if Carson Beck is not necessarily having the greatest game, we can continue to evolve. We can continue to get turnovers and give the offense extra possession so they can give them time to figure this thing out, man. But That did not happen. Like you said, and I think that, I think for me, the one thing that did it for me was that Austin Simmons drive. I was just like, the backup quarterback came in and just made it look like it was that easy.
Yeah.
That's not supposed to happen. I'm sorry, because especially, I know Glenn Schumann is the defense coordinator, but when you think about the Kirby Smart and who he is and how he's being able to flourish as a head coach and be that guy and be one of the best coaches in the country and win back-to-back national championships, man. If there's one spot that is always going to be on point, it's that doggone defense, man. And that just wasn't the case. And I think that this is something that I feel that could potentially hinder them, going forward, because Michael Williams was non-existent tonight. Jalen Walker was non-existent tonight. And I'm just trying to figure out, like, why Kirby can't get these guys motivated, especially on the road against Ole Miss, an SEC opponent, and they just did not show up front. That's where I got all the questions.
Yeah, no, 100%. And this is something we've been talking about for a couple weeks, and it was something early on. All right, is this going to get going? Can you get Michael going? Can you get this going? Jalen Walker had some moments, had a couple good games, but this team is what it is now. They're 9 games in, like we're in the middle of November at this point. So if this is the situation that they're stepping into, this is what it is. And the defense has regressed. The offense is it hasn't really gotten better, but it's sort of almost as plateaued. No one's really emerged as a guy, as a receiver, any sort of consistent threat. And part of that's been the offensive line getting beat, like you saw today. Part of it's been inaccuracy there from Carson Beck. And one thing I want to loop back around to that you said with Michael, and now you're in a spot too where both offensively and defensively, you could probably say 2 or 3 of the best 5 players on the team are banged up. Are they Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey from last year? No, they're definitely not. But ETN, Ratledge, Michael Williams, these guys are playing at way less than 100%, and you can just see it out there, and you can literally see it from ETN from being taken off the field last week, being taken off for long stretches this past week, because this was the type of game that you needed ETN. You needed that little dump-off pass out of the backfield when the pressure was coming, when Ernest Green got beat, and maybe it's a little chip and a run out, in the flat kind of a thing. They needed that element of their offense, and it's not an explosive offense in that way. So those little 3, 4, 5, 6-yard plays are essential for this offense to have success. So now you have them not performing and the addition of, okay, some of the best players are hurt on top of it, and you're not the team that you were last year, and you saw what you saw tonight.
Yeah, man, the injury piece is huge. And that's why I think that we need to have a conversation about playoffs. We're talking about playoffs? This episode of the Locked On Bulldogs Postcast is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold also provides the privilege of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. You should definitely take advantage of Robinhood Gold. It can benefit you tremendously. So the new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Let me say that again for all you folks that did not hear what I just said. The new gold standard is here, right here, ready to hit you right in the face with Robinhood Gold. So sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. That's Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Also want to let you know that this episode of the Bulldogs Postcast is brought to you by FanDuel.com. Guess what, guys? Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We got the Falcons game coming up tomorrow. We'll be right here, back here on the Falcons Postcast. So go ahead and get in on the action with America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets. Get $150 in bonus bets when you put five, and if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. All you got to do is just visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to join today. Now go do it right now. FanDuel.com. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. It's just that easy. I promise you. So smooth, such a smooth process. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook betting partner of the NFL. Wrap everything up on the Bulldogs Postcast. We want to say thank you for making the Bulldogs Postcast your first listen of the day. Why don't you stop by the Falcons Postcast and check us out right after Falcons games? We really appreciate that from you in advance. BG, we've had a conversation about the offense and how it just looked all out of whack. Mike Bobo tried to establish something in the beginning, and it just did not work out quite in their favor. Defense, secondary got cooked. Michael Williams, Jalen Walker, and those guys were nowhere to be found. But with the combination of all of those things and how this team played tonight against Ole Miss, they got an L. They got 2 SEC losses, Alabama, this Ole Miss, and this is one of those 3 games. Those are 2 of the 3 games that we talked about coming into the season where we circled and said, hey, this can be a problem. This can be an issue. And they ended up losing those games. So are we now talking about the Bulldogs potentially not being involved in the playoffs?
I mean, it's definitely in consideration now at this point. I mean, Georgia's just lumped themselves in with the rest of the SEC. Like the top half of the SEC is all kind of in one boat now at this point. You have a handful of teams that still have the one SEC loss. That's A&M, that's LSU, who's taking on Bama right now. That game is underway. I'm not even sure what the score is at the moment. You've got Texas, who's got the one loss there to Georgia, and then Tennessee, who, of course, Georgia has next week. But Georgia's now in that group with Ole Miss, who has the tiebreaker over them, and Alabama, who has the tiebreaker over them. So, and then I don't know what the third. I don't know all the tiebreakers. I know Sankey broke it down at SEC Media Days, and it was funny because everyone had a laugh about it then, about all these tiebreaker scenarios and how weird it's going to be. It's going to come into play for sure, 100%. We're going to have some sort of weird, student enrollment or breakdown of like what tuition costs or something is going to wind up being who gets in to this SEC title game. But now for me, it's curious because, all right, I don't know if it's better for Georgia in terms of making the playoff, right? I don't know if it's better to get into the SEC game and lose or just try to win out. And then maybe you're the team sitting out of the SEC where you're third or fourth the way that the tiebreakers go, and you got that chance. Either way, now you're just staring at a really good Tennessee team. I know they've got the one kind of bad loss against Arkansas, but besides that, they won all their games. I know they're playing Mississippi State right now, but now you're looking at that, and you talk about that Ole Miss defensive line we just saw. Tennessee's got some dudes up front on that defensive line, sure, and they can quiet that crowd in Sanford Stadium really quick if it looks like what it did tonight. Like if Ernest Green plays like what he did at left tackle tonight for Georgia, the season could be over next week.
Yeah, Monroe Freeling, he didn't look that great. He had his issues, and coming out of the half, they kind of shuffled some things around. And when you make those type of substitutions, that it just lets you know that where they are as an offensive line. And a lot of people tried to kind of throw offensive line on the bus when Carson Beck was just going through it. He was just going through it with all these interceptions and everything. I was like, hey man, I was defending those guys. I was like, hey, The man hasn't been under siege. This dude's been throwing interceptions with no pressure. You know, he's been looking at the rush and stepping into the rush and, and just throwing picks from the pocket, man. He wasn't, running for his life and threw the ball away. But this game right here, this was the game where I looked at this offensive line and I said, hey man, this is not where you all need to be headed, because we talked about this, who this team is right now. There is no, oh yeah, they can get back on track. No, this is who they are.
Yep.
And if you're telling me this is who this team is, which I'm saying, I just don't see a path to the playoffs, because this is just not the type of football that I'm used to watching with under a Kirby Smart coach team. I'm just not used to seeing this type of play, especially up front on both sides of the football. So I feel like this is a game coming into this Tennessee game, and just kind of looking ahead, I feel like this is the type of game where they're going to have to figure out who is going to be the guy they can kind of lean on offensively. And you would have thought it was Trevor Etienne, but he's been dealing with his injuries. You would have thought maybe Nate Frazier can be that freshman running back to kind of come out of nowhere and kind of take this team on to glory, but he can't hang on to the football. And that's why I'm concerned about this team having a real shot going forward.
Yeah, if Etienne's out, I mean, Bobo's got to have the best game plan he's had in a long time. He's got to whip out whatever he's able to figure out, whatever he's able to bring to the table and make happen. It's got to happen. It's no more save for later in the year, save for the SEC, save for that. I know a lot of people are really frustrated too with Bobo, and I appreciate everybody. We see you guys chiming in on the chat. I know there's a lot of Bobo related comments. I'm also, like you mentioned at the top of the podcast, a UGA alum. So I got all of my buddies in a text group that are fire Bobo, put in Gunner. Everybody's at that point in the season. We've reached.
Go start with Bobo. Like there are other places you can go before you get to Bobo.
But I think, and we kind of talked about it in the beginning and throughout this whole podcast here tonight, is yeah, Bobo's a little bit of a problem. Beck's a little bit of the problem. Offensive line's a little bit of the problem. Injuries are a little bit of the problem. Now the secondary is a bit of the problem. So it's all of these things now. Because I agree. I mean, do I think Bobo's the right guy to be the offensive coordinator at Georgia? No. Do I think it was a lazy hire when it happened a couple of years back? Yeah, I do. But you're in it now. And no, Gunnar Stockton is not the answer. And he's not the person who's going to lead you into the playoffs either. I know people are like, oh, just give him a chance. And it's like, no, calm down. You still are the playoffs for sure. If you win out, are you going to get in there? No, you don't know for sure. But you still, in theory, have what you need in front of you. I think when it comes to that decision of Georgia being in the playoff or not, I do think they will get the benefit of the doubt of the fact that it is Kirby. It is Georgia. They were left out last year. Like, this team is still capable, even though they're very flawed. They know they're still good within it. It's just, we haven't seen it a lot. We haven't seen it for 4 quarters constantly. But if it gets boiled down to, okay, this team or that team, and honestly, in state, Georgia Tech may have done Georgia a little bit of a favor today and taken down Miami, because now the ACC might only wind up with one team. SMU's right there in the picture, Georgia Tech, Clemson, but they've got the 2 losses, one of them being to Georgia, and of course in a blowout fashion. So if Clemson goes in there and beats Miami in an ACC game, or if SMU does, I think there really is only one ACC team. And then you start to look at, okay, Georgia's going to be in this group lumped in with probably in Indiana and Ole Miss, whoever wins this Bama LSU game, whoever wins Texas and Texas A&M. So they're just part of the conversation. They're going to be one of 5 or 6 teams looking at 2 spots potentially if they don't wind up getting into that SEC and get the automatic qualifier.
Absolutely, man. I think there are so many scenarios that George is probably going to go through. I don't think Kirby is going to go through all of them at this point, but I do feel that there are some people in that building saying, hey, man, we got to win out and pretty much pray to get into the playoffs.
Yeah.
So we want to say thank you for being a part of the conversation and making the Locked On Bulldogs postcast your first listen of the day. We really appreciate that from you in advance. And also, make sure you continue to check us out. And we're going to be on the Locked On Bulldogs audio feed. And we're always live on Locked On Sports at Atlanta. We'll see y'all right right here on Locked On Sports Atlanta, next week, right after the Tennessee Volunteers game.